If you didn't drop out of school before the 6th grade, you probably know of a little event called World War One. And if you don't know, then let's just say it wasn't very cool. Now, for my more astute viewers who indulge themselves in niche history, they may also know that Germany and Austria-Hungary didn't do too well during this war and ended up losing. Due to this, they both would be hit with very hard treaties, taking land and reducing their armies. But this didn't have to last forever. With me leading Germany and my friend as Austria, we would come together to reform our empires of old and gain our place in the sun once again, eventually taking on the whole world. This time with a twist, though. But first things first, though, Civil War time. And if you don't already know how to do it, then you start by putting the strongest troops in the middle, splitting their lines in half, then allowing you to finish out the pocket in the south, after which you use your whole army on the north to win the war. And after doing a Sayori reference with the previous administration, I could finally get to fixing the nation. And with a rowdy population, I would have to do that as fast as possible, by first tending to the future of Germany, and if you didn't pay attention to the intro, that future would be one under the Kaiserreich. And while I was waiting to get enough non-aligned support to switch ideologies, I would go down the economy tree. As I was doing this, Spain as usual would go into civil war, but joining them this time was Hungary and Mexico, who also went into civil wars. After some more waiting and going down my economy tree, I'd finally be able to do the focus I would set on the path of having the Kaiser return. But while this was happening, civil wars would break out in Estonia and Latvia, which was worrying due to one of them being a communist revolution, meaning the Red Menace would grow in strength. But that's future me's problem, and current me's problem was actually finding someone to be in charge of this country. But unlike the original German Empire, this one wouldn't be run by a warmongering absolute monarch, as all that would lead to would be war. So instead we put a military dictatorship in charge. With the Kaiser back and people not complaining all day, I could finally finish the economy tree, which would fix the economy and give me some nice bonuses for later. And with that done, I would reclaim my first lost territory, demanding the return of some Jutland from Denmark, and due to my overwhelming military superiority and rightful claim, they would give it up without a fight. But to get my other lost land, I would have to build up my military so I could have enough troops to demand more of it back. And after a large-scale increase to my army, I would demand my second piece of lost land back. Memel, from the Lithuanians. But even though I had a bigger army and a rightful claim, they still denied my ultimatum, leading to me having to liberate it myself, and due to them denying my rightful land, I would annex them entirely. But during this time, the Soviets would go into a civil war, so I'd wait for that to be done so I could have full reign to do whatever I wanted over the rest of the Baltics. With the Soviet Civil War over and no more protection, I would go into the Baltic, and with my much stronger army, I would defeat them both quickly and create the United Baltic Duchy, a puppet state to govern the area. After that, though, I had forgiven the Lithuanians and decided to just create a puppet state in the area, but in hindsight, I should have just annexed them into the Baltic Duchy because they took Memel with them. But now with the Baltic secured, I can now focus on connecting East Prussia to the rest of Germany, so I sent an ultimatum to Poland demanding the return of former German territories, expecting them to deny. And with my better army, I could run them over and oh, wait, they just gave it to me. Well, that makes sense, they were in a civil war, but now that they're out of their civil war, they had to deny the next ultimatum. They just gave it to me. But I'm not one to complain because I get chores on the land. And for a while after that, I would just sit around and build up, waiting for when I could invite my friend to my faction. And finally, after Mexico for some reason declared war on America, I could get my friend into my faction. After this, though, we would do the dumbest thing of the whole game, going on Italy. At first, this was to get Yugoslavia so my friend can form Austria-Hungary, but even after they gave up the land, we still decided to go in on them. And after some prep, the Italians would declare war on my friend, with me joining shortly after, starting the first large-scale war we would be participating in this game. First, we had to face the classic German issue of supplying Yugoslavia, which slowed down our armies and cost us more soldiers than what we had expected. But even when the Yugoslavians capitulated, the Italians had max entrenchment across the Alps, and pushing through them would be almost impossible. But thankfully, I had a new plan, and if done right, could win us the war and get us even more land in the process. This plan I called Around the Alps, which just like in World War I, started by invading France through Belgium and the Luxembourg. But this time, it had a different objective. Defeat Italy from the west, because when France capitulated, my friend would pin down the Italian army in the east, allowing me to snake through Italy and capitulate them, ending the war, making it so we don't have to do death waves into the Italians until the end of time. Due to this plan being thought up by the greatest German minds of the Supreme Command, and probably the more likely option of my friend not being able to come up with a better idea, we commenced Operation Around the Alps. But just like our war with Italy, this didn't go so well at the start, as the French broke through my defense across the Maginot Line almost instantly, cutting off my supply and possibly jeopardizing my entire army. but thankfully I was able to capitulate Belgium, leaving the way to Paris underdefended. After this, I would make a strong breakthrough into France itself with my tanks and would eventually take Paris, capitulating the French along with encircling some parts of the Italian army. And now with the first phase of the plan done, I would move on to phase 2. Though what was left of the French army and fragments of Italians caused me some small delays, I would eventually encircle them and begin marching south into the heartland of Italy. After getting far enough to cause them to go into civil war, they would be too weak to resist and would eventually capitulate. But there's something the plan didn't take into account: another major power. This was because at the start of the war, even though Bulgaria was in the Italian alliance, they didn't join the war, but sometime during the march through Italy, they would join the war without us even knowing. And due to this, they were able to walk through our land, even being able to bring back Yugoslavia and Albania from the grave. But I wouldn't let this slide, so I sent the army fresh from Italy to deal with them, and probably because this is the first war Bulgaria has been in 20 plus years, they didn't do too well, and with their capitulation we were able to get a peace deal. To sum up the peace deal, my friend would get Italy and the Balkans, while I would get France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and all of French Africa. Now with these beautiful borders, nice borders? With these borders and control over most of Western Europe, we thought we were strong enough to go east and deal with the Red Menace, the Soviet Union. Thankfully though, in this war we would have an ally, the Japanese, who had been fighting the Soviets for a while now, even though they weren't done in China. But even with Japan making terrible military decisions that not even the Italians would come up with, they were lucky that the Allies had somehow done worse, with them not even being able to beat Norway and Sweden. But now back to us, I had come up with another genius plan. Because Japan didn't have a faction and was not aligned, we were able to invite them to our faction, meaning the Soviets wouldn't get any warnings of us declaring war on them, letting us walk right through the land, with the best part being that even when the Soviet army got to the front, they would have low organization due to just traveling across an entire continent, allowing us to crush them. And after some preparations, we'd finally let the Japanese into our faction, allowing us to join the war, starting the second large war we would be in for this game. But sadly, this time, no cool name for the operation. Unlike the other wars we were in, this one went according to plan, and by the end of the year we'd have control of Belarus, Ukraine, Western Russia, and would be laying siege to Leningrad. And due to this war being one of eradicating communism and the Soviets creating many enemies, we would get many allies like Portugal, some Chinese warlord that I can't pronounce, and Afghanistan. And with the fall of Moscow, Stalingrad, and the Caucasus, it was only a matter of time before the Soviets collapsed. And after a year, a million dead Germans, a break so my friend could go to church, and 2 restarts, we could finally get a peace deal. To sum up the peace deal, I would give my puppets and allies some land, give Japan the Far East, and my friend would do whatever this is to the rest of Russia. But now with the Soviets down, we still had 3 problems. First, Japan was still eating dirt in China. Second, I didn't have all of Africa. And last, but most importantly, England still existed. I first tried to deal with our first problem, but due to there being no supply, the Japanese military being nothing but cheerleaders, and my tanks low-key sucking, I gave up on that idea fast. After that, we just decided to go all in on our other problems, with both birds being able to be killed with one stone, as my friend would do something others wouldn't even do if they had a gun to their head: made a navy. And thankfully Mexico had been in the Soviet faction, and had been puppeted by my friend, meaning that the other major allied power could be dealt with easily, and so after some preparations we decided to go in on our last enemy. To start the war, with my air force and my friend's navy, we could get a landing in Britain, and after I bring my tanks over, that are actually good this time, Britain fell quickly. And now with Britain down, I could focus on America, and with a couple of encirclements, and a bigger and better army than them, I basically just walked through their land. But oh boy, was there a lot of land to walk through, and by the time they capitulated, Canada had become a major power, and somehow they had landed back on Britain, almost bringing them back from the grave, but thankfully, Canada capitulated before that could happen. And to sum up this peace deal, other than the fact that I was gone for a lot of it, my friend got their navy and gave Mexico their old land, while I got everything else, including Africa and Britain. Now, if our second problem dealt with, and not caring about the first anymore, I would deal with problem 3, by releasing Scotland and Wales, leaving the English to rot in their dumpster fire of a country.